how did I ever get that photo? But I was very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time.
Sure.
And actually, a couple of those I was very fortunate to walk away without any holes in me,
Right.
flying apart. So, Larry Bowers with his clutch coming out at Orange County.
That's a crazy one where they're all like splayed up above them and you can see all the pieces came out. Wow.
And if you look close, there's a rod coming out the motor too at the bottom. So
I'll look again.
it was like a mass destruction deal.
Wow. Wow.
That was one shot. That was just one shot. And I was on the wrong side of the track. Every story or every photo has a story connected to it, how I got it. And it was one of those deals where I got called across the track and somebody wanted to say something nonsensical to me, like, "Hey, do you want a soda?" or something, something like that. And I got trapped. I couldn't go back. I couldn't cross the track. So, okay, Bowers is coming down and this other guy, okay, I'll stay there and shoot.
Right.
I never saw the clutch come out. All I saw was the clutch dust. And then, all heck breaks loose. There's pieces and there's, crap flying everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. I didn't get hit, but a gentleman in the pits is walking through the pits, minding his own business. One of the discs hit in front of him and made it like an inch indentation in the asphalt, and it came up and it took his kneecap off.
Oh, no.
So I was very, very fortunate. I was closer, than most people would want to be, but it's one of those things where you stand there and you go, well, are there any holes in me right now?
Hey, welcome to Car Guy Confessions, brought to you by ARP. I'm Jeff Smith. This is my car buddy Cam Benty and car builder Steve Strope, and we're going to tell you some stories.
It's official. You're being recorded now. So here we go. So welcome to another episode of Car Guy Confessions without Jeff Smith this time. Jeff is he's approved this one. We've got a really good guest today. By the way, I want to mention our sponsor, ARP. ARP-bolts.com. We can't do this without them. So really appreciate those folks, Bob Florine and the boys, really do us well. But I have a special guest, inarguably to me, the most famous drag racing photographer of all time and a good friend of mine. And I'm so happy to have him, Mr. Steve Reyes. How you doing, Steve?
Howdy. How you doing?
Mr. Enthusiasm. We're going to get him rolling. We're going to get him rolling. It's early, so no problem. But Steve and I worked together at Popular Hot Rodding. I started there in 81 through about 86, but his history really starts in 1964. And as a key ingredient to this whole deal, you have done a number of books that outline your photography starting, is 64 the right year to say that we started?
Well, as far as like I started to attend races in 63, but I did not take a camera. I was just, some idiot kid, like I just turned
like the rest of us.
Old, and begging my dad to take me to the races because I had seen an ad in the Oakland Tribune, playing up these, 200-mile-an-hour land missiles, so to speak.
Yeah.
Nitro burning dragsters. And
which track was that?
Fremont.
Fremont. It was Fremont. Yeah.
I'm from Oakland, California, which is about 25 miles from where Fremont Dragster, was. And it was just one of those things. A 15-year-old, you're really fascinated by that because I had, thumbed through old Carcraft and hot rods and had, gone down to the Oakland Roadster Show and watched them bring the cars out. And I was too broke, broke kid. Didn't have any money, but I had enough money to take a bus down there on the last night at the Oakland Roadster Show. You have to drive everything out if you're a street rod or whatever. Right. And then of course they would bring the dragsters out, and I would just sit there. They had like these, like a little mound that surrounded the parking lot, a little hill, and you'd sit up there and watch them bring all the cars out.
Oh, but, cool.
That kind of got me going on this whole magical mystery tour, so to speak, of cars and things and all that other stuff. But yeah, that was 63. 64, I actually brought a camera to the races. My dad's 620 Brownie
Nice.
I was gonna burn the world up with a 620 Brownie, but and then I got into, my dad had a movie camera, so I would be the next Steven Spielberg or whatever, and that didn't pan out real well either. But and then 35 millimeter in 1960, about mid 65, I got my first 35 millimeter, and the rest
off from there. It was off from there. Yeah. What was your first 35 millimeter camera?
It was a Kawa, which probably nobody's ever heard of.
Never heard of it.
But it was just kind of it was okay, but you had to screw on the extension lenses to be a telephoto. You had to screw on an extension to the normal lens to magnify it out to, it was, I bought it brand new, and I thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread when I got that. But the camera that really worked for me was a Pentax 35, which was the next camera that I had gotten, and that was a workhorse, very, very much a workhorse.
So how often did you go to Fremont? 64, you kind of became a regular down there.
Well, if I could convince my dad to take me, which was not easy, because I had to like one of those mow every lawn in the county, and clean the windows or whatever he needed me to do, wash his car, wax his car. Then he would probably would
take it down. Huh?
Yeah, but then I got a motorcycle when I was 15 and a half.
Nice.
And it's freedom, and I could wrap my camera bag on the back of the Honda 305 Dream, and motor off to the drag race.
Wow.
So that's what got me a little bit of freedom going to the races like that.
That was the start. So that picture behind you has significance for something right now, which is your newest book. That's your next book. How many books have you done?
I've done let's see, I've done 9
wow.
of my own, and this one I think would be 10. Now I've helped, the late Tom Madigan, I helped him with his like 3 or 4 of his books, and then I've helped a gentleman named Doug Boyce out of Canada. He's done some drag racing books. I've helped him.
Nice.
And Lou Hart, who has a brand new funny car book coming from Car Tech. It'll be out, in fact, this month, the later couple weeks in April. I helped him with his book. I had a lot of rear engine funny cars that he didn't have for the book. And Lou has just incredible. He put an incredible package together of this funny car book that's coming. Now he's working on a really special book about Roland Leong and the whole line of Hawaiian dragsters and funny cars. And that's what he's writing right now. But my book, right behind me is the cover, Pure Hell. Yeah. It's a history of Northern California drag racing from 1964 to about 1971, 72, right in there. Okay. It's kind of like my history and the area's history. There were 17 different drag strips running in that area. And of course, I dragged my butt around to all of them.
On the bike? Did you take the bike most of the time?
Yeah, the bike, until the bike blew up. And then it was when I lived in Salinas for a little bit, a gentleman named Rob Sterling, who ran a B-Fuel dragster. I got to know him, and he would throw me in the back of his pickup truck on a dark 30 on a Sunday morning, and we'd head to Fremont or Half Moon Bay or wherever he was racing. Right. And I was his touring photographer. Wow. Rain or shine, I rode in the back of a pickup truck, because he had his crew guy and him were in the cab of this pickup truck, and there was no room for me, so I rode in.
You're a small guy. You're just a tiny guy.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit of a challenged person here, but I was. That's how I got to the races, in quite a bit in 1966. Right in there, my motorcycle was dead, and I needed to get to the races, and Rob took care of me. He was one of those guys that made sure I got to the races, along with another gentleman, Carl Olson, who
I know Carl. Yeah.
Yeah, went on to drive for the, Cool and Olson, and he had his own Top Fuel car. He drove for Jack Ewell. He won the 1972 Winter Nationals. And anyway, it was one of those deals. I knew Carl when he just started, and I was his official touring photographer also.
Wow.
He would drag
thank
me
God. Well, thank God they did, because the legacy of stuff that you have covered. By the way, on your book, where can people buy that book? Can they get it?
This book will be out. It's the title is Northern California Drag Racing,
right?
And it's published by Arcadia.
Okay.
And it's going to be out at the beginning of May, I believe, and it will be available at Barnes and Noble or Amazon, anywhere that Arcadia history books are sold.
Right. Okay, well, good. Well, I'll have to definitely pick up a copy. That's awesome.
It was a fun deal because, like I said, it coincides with my career in Northern California before I left there and went down to Los Angeles to either make it or break it. So
right. But it's just just awesome, the stuff that you've shown me, the samples that you sent me. Just first of all, brings me back to the stuff when we were at Argus. That was a great time, but that was way after all this stuff was going on. But in terms of, just to set perspective, NHRA and Leslie Lovett, and we'll get into some of these because you knew all those guys, and we have photos of you with it for documentation of that. But those guys, NHRA has its own archive, but you went to all the races. You went to NHRA, you went to AHRA, IHRA, independent. If some guy was down the street, you'd go get him, right? So, and your uncanny ability to know when something was going to happen. You were talking about a race against Dickie Harrell, and everybody's watching Dickie Harrell, and it's the guy in the next lane that's going to be the fun one to watch, not the explosions and such or whatever.
In the Brutus car, exploding his transmission everywhere, and I'm like, I took care of my guy. I got his photo, and
there you go.
Photographing Dickie Harrell doing a 8-foot wheel stand on the other side. I was photographing the funny car on my side, which was engulfed in fire and parts, and it was just mayhem. But yeah, I got pictures. We got the pictures.
And you were in the era of crazy fire burnouts, bleach burnouts, all the stuff that's illegal now. Now they can use water, but the fire burnout stuff that you sent me is just incredible stuff. It's crazy. And
I'll tell you what, it was pretty wacky to do some of that stuff. And I got in trouble with like Mike Jones in Orange County for basically burning a hole in his asphalt in the leaf box area. And Irwindale, they made me I did a fire burnout there, and I had to do it in the pit area. And then I did a Butch Leal and I got together and said, hey, we haven't seen any pro stocks do a burnout or fire burnout. Let's do one. So we did, and ended up with a cover on Drag Racing magazine. But the first one I really did was with not Carl, but with Billy Tidwell and Mike Cool.
Okay. Yeah, I knew them both. Yeah. There's Kelly's still around. I know Mike has passed, but I did some engine buildups in popular hot rodding with Mike, and he was awesome.
Well, Mike was a different guy, but he's a good guy. He's a pyromaniac. But we got together after at Indy in 1970. They ran off the end of the racetrack and crashed into the ABC wide world of sports camera, and the camera came down and smashed. Got the body pretty bad.
Wow.
So they brought it back home, and hey Mike, let's do a fire burnout. You can't hurt the body. You can't hurt the paint job, right? But Mike is like, yeah, okay. So we dragged the car out to Orange County, and Tidwell gets in the car, and we fired the thing up. And their crew guy Fats comes over, and he's got like this 2-3 gallon thing full of gasoline, right? He starts throwing the gas underneath the car. And I'm just standing there, adjusting my camera and all that. And all of a sudden the gas ignites on the and it just whoosh. And of course, Fats loses all of the hair on his arm and his eyebrows and part of his hair. And Tidwell is just sitting there. And Billy told me, he said he he felt the fire, obviously, right? And he
Right.
looked down, and the whole inside of the cockpit was on fire. So he felt that that was the time he should go.
Probably time to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, and he hit the throttle, but I shot just prior to that. So you have him kind of looking down, and just this whole engulfed flame and fire and mayhem, and he came out of the fire with the parachute pack on fire because they didn't have fireproof parachute packs back then. And well, we put that out, destroyed the paint. So
which was already wrecked already. So the paint was no loss. But I got to tell you, I mean, guys had to be getting burned all the time when they were doing that. I mean, too close. I mean, if there's smoke, there's fire, and if you got fire, you're getting burned. So, what crazy deal.
Some of these guys that didn't really know what they were doing, kind of like me, but the racers. What happens if you have too much fire? It sucks the oxygen and it kills the engine. The engine has no oxygen to come into the injector. So there were a couple instances in Texas. I know some Texas top fuel guys, they had to pull the car out of the fire because the car stalled.
Yeah, I bet.
NHRA looks at that and says, well, guys,
no more of those.
So one of the things I like to do is always assemble an engine with ARP bolts, and it's not just because they're sponsors, but because it really does work. And the stuff is fantastic. I never have to worry about it. Steve, you building cars too?
Yeah, actually, it's part of my baseline design plan when I'm building a car that's going to be shown or featured in a magazine. It's part of the plan to have that little bit of diamonds all over the engine bay or in the suspension.
Yeah, the stuff is beautiful. I remember a long time ago, I built the first time I ever touched it, 69 Z28. All of the water jacket holes had stripped out, and I learned about ARP studs.
So check them out at arp-bolts.com or check out their catalog. You'll find everything you're looking for.
Yeah, and like the one I have, a Shirley Muldowney at Martin, Michigan. That was an accident. That was just VHS igniting. There was too much VHS in the in the bleach box.
Oh, VHT? Is it VHT? That stuff?
It ignited, and it just whoosh. And that was one of those deals where NHRA got a hold of her and said, burnouts, and and then, I did one with the Greek that was pretty cool, and But
where did that start? Who did the first one of those, or was it just an accident and somebody? Garlitz and TC. TC was a pyromaniac from way back, but they did that just as a show. They did it with the front motor car, and then Garlitz, blew his foot off, and that curtailed that for a while. But it was the monkey see, monkey do deal. Okay, if Garlitz can do it, I can do it. Right. And so anyway, and then Garlitz, when he got his back motor car, obviously they could do really nice fire burnouts, because the ones he did with the front motor car, they were okay, but the back motor ones were, they were barn burners. He did a couple at Martin, Michigan, and he did a couple for me at Lakeland, Florida. There's a huge, like a billboard photo inside of the museum, Garlitz Museum. Well, that's mine. And it was shot at Lakeland, and this I think is pretty spectacular. But Garlitz was the guy that he perfected not only the back motor car, but the show, the fire burnout show. Well, he was a showman. There's no question. He still is. I mean, he had a recent event where they did a Hall of Fame thing down in at the Gator National. So he's still running strong. Martin, Michigan. We spent a lot of time there. You obviously were there many years before me, but that was a good track. If you haven't been to it lately, it is really a nice track. If it still exists, it's funny. I thought I heard something about whether it was going to go or not. But anyway, regardless,
I believe it's an IHRA.
I think so. Yes, but it was beautiful. The last time I was there, which has probably been 10 years, it was awesome. And the times that we went, it was John Grivens. Did I ever tell you my introduction to John Grivens? No. Showed up with Pete Pestaire at the Martin, Michigan. And I meet him, say hi. I don't even get out of the rental car. We're just like, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, the whole bit. And I said, hey, you got a dirt track over there. Care if I take a couple of laps? And I had a Mustang rental car. And so I proceeded to go to went to the dirt track and did a bunch of, goofy reverse lock deals with the car. Well, I guess he didn't expect me to be doing that. So I showed up. He showed up shortly thereafter, pissed off, swearing he was going to get me fired, the whole bit. And so it's like, okay, you told me I could go here. No, well, I'm not doing that. So we pull off, get out of the rental car, and all the wheel covers are missing. So Pete and I have to walk the track. Anyway, typical meeting, impressing people everywhere I go. But anyway.
Yeah, Grivens, he was a different kind of guy. He walked a different.
Yes,
step.
he did. Yes, he did. Well, you dealt with him when was the first time you went to Martin, Michigan?
I think I went to Martin. The first time was in 1971.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you predated me by 10. Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the first popular hot rodding event. I believe was in 1970.
Right.
When I went to 71, 72.
I remember doing a story about it. It was 1970. So yeah, crazy. But yeah, so that's amazing. So you started going to the track. You're a touring photographer. Carl Olson, by the way, what an awesome guy. He became the industry relations guy for NHRA for 30 years or something like that. So pretty crazy. And he always told me he was the second to the last guy down Lions because he won the race. He got the trophy at the last race at Lions. So another great place. And you obviously were a regular at Lions, I'm sure.
Well, when I could get there, I lived in Northern California, but
sure,
chance I got to go to the beach, Lions.
Right.
The first time I ever went to Lions was in 1966 for the Mickey Thompson 200-mile-an-hour club race,
right,
which was an absolute zoo, but it was incredible.
Right.
Top fuel, junior fuel, top gas. That's all there was. And it was just, they'd start running like at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock or whatever in the morning. And they'd be still running at 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And it was an incredible show that Mickey Thompson put on at that event. And then,
yep, you bet. Well, it was a target-rich environment for you, I'm sure.
Well, no, Lions was a place that I toured with Ed Carter and Bob Little, who had the Chevy Too Heavy funny car out of Newark, California, which is where I lived. I ended up in Newark, which is right down the road from Fremont. Right. And I was there, touring photographer also. Yeah. And they were one of those, hey, we're going to Lions, get in the station wagon. And so I'd get in their tow car and we all, we'd go and the car they had was outdated. It was Steve Bovan's old Blair Speech Up Nova, but they updated it a little bit and renamed it, and they just wanted to have fun with a funny car. And,
sure.
They never expected to, go all the way to a final or anything, but they took me,
right.
I shot photos. The first round loser, they had photos of them racing at Lions or wherever. They stayed for the whole event because they were fans. They like to watch the races. So
sure.
The one night that they won the first round was like, it was like they won the nationals at the final at the NHRA Nationals. And the car they beat was Pat Foster driving
wow.
Ron Kirby's 200-mile-an-hour Roadster Corvette, right? The Roadster Corvette was running in the low 8s, high 7s or something like that, right?
Right.
And the Chevy Too Heavy's running maybe in the high 8s, early 9s. And,
wow.
And they beat him because Pat did about a 5-foot wheel stand and then couldn't recover. And Carter was like, it was like the
hold it down,
chasing the tortoise, so to speak. And
wow.
But we won. We won.
Absolutely. Around. There's nothing to replace that feeling. That's for damn sure.
But they took me everywhere. Everywhere they went, they took me up to Washington. They took me to some strange track called Vina in the middle of nowhere in California.
Wow.
Anywhere they went with the Chevy Too Heavy.
That was you. You were there.
Yeah.
But that was great. So you're meeting all these guys, and were you selling photography at the time? Were you able to sell photos to folks and kind of take care of yourself there? Yeah.
that was my main source of income. Well, my only source of income. Uh, and I had guys like Frank Bradley and
Yeah.
some of these other, Ormsby and these guys in Northern California, they kept me alive. That they literally, guys like Bob Keith, who, the Goodnight Keith and Williamson was the top gas car.
Right.
And he would just come over and shake my hand, and there'd be a $20 bill in there and said, "Hey kid, just take care of me with, with photos and Drag News or
Nice.
or Drag World or whoever I was doing photos for." That's just the kind of guys that
Right.
that I was, that treated me really well when I was a kid in Northern California. And the book I did, the NorCal book, is kind of a payback to them, kind of a tribute to all these guys that really kept me alive. They kept me going in the sport, and and I got established through taking photos of them doing either wacky things or winning. So
winning is usually better for them. Wacky things, yeah. but you were just so far ahead of everybody else. I mean, just to have the legacy, and now you've digitized a lot of your photography, correct? I mean, you've been so it works great for creating books, and people can buy photography from you and do whatever. But it's just the legacy is amazing. So you're going to all these tracks. You're going to you go to Bakersfield. How far east did you go during that time?
Let's see here. I would go to Scottsdale, Arizona. In '69, I went on tour. Well, I went to Dallas.
Okay.
And then that was in '69. And then I went on tour with another photographer, a guy named George Calloway. And we went to Bonneville.
Nice.
Then we went to a AHRA race in Bristol.
Nice.
And then
so you're getting back east. Yeah. Okay.
That was our tour. And then we ended up at the Arfons brothers shop in Ohio, the Art and Walt Arfons in Akron.
Nice. I still talk to Sherry. She's a marketing person, so she's doing a good job. And so the Arfon stuff, some crazy stuff.
Sherry's married to Tim, right?
I think so. I think that sounds right.
Well, Tim dragged my butt to the Netherlands.
Really? Oh, how cool is that? That's east.
Rotterdam.
That's east.
In I think it was 1990. I think we went to Rotterdam, and he ran his two-wheel drive jet turbine funny car over there at a tractor pull.
Wow.
And it was one of those deals where I was doing a lot of monster truck and tractor pull stuff.
Sure.
And Tim came up to me and he says, "What are you doing next week or 2 weeks from now?" I said, "I don't know." And he says, "You want to go to Holland with me?"
Right.
Sure, why not?
Sure. What the heck?
So that's where I ended up.
How cool is that?
He ran his funny car. I think 2 events there in Rotterdam, and I think in what's the other Maine? We landed there. I'm drawing a blank now as far as
go to Santa Pod up in England or not?
Oh, I went to Santa Pod, but I did that with Raymond Beadle and the Blue Max guys. Now that was a different kind of tour.
I bet. Well, the key is these guys are all characters. I mean, these guys are all unbelievable things. Something that crossed my mind was just to talk about the texture of all the things you used to do, you had a pass from Cooperstown. And I remember sitting in the dugout and watching a White Sox game because you had passes. You could get into any baseball game that you wanted to. I mean, how many years did you do that?
I did Major League Baseball from '81 to '84.
Okay.
And that was Reggie Jackson's the one that got me.
Oh, yeah?
I delivered some photos of his cars. I shot some of his cars.
Right.
And in '81, I ended up in spring training, Yankee spring training, which is just down the road really from Gainesville.
Right. Sure.
And, so I delivered these photos, and Reggie says, "Hey, I want you to meet somebody." So, okay, well, and there's this gentleman, and I'd like you to meet, this is Clifford Cackline, who is the curator at Cooperstown at the
Sure. Yeah, I've been there. Sure. Yeah, it's an awesome place.
so Reggie shows Clifford the photos of him with his cars. And so Cackline's like, "Oh, these are really cool." Rick Shute had made prints for me, 16 by 20 prints for Reggie. And he did a really nice job. And Cackline looks at, "Hey, can you get me a set of these for the museum?" I said, "Well, okay, whatever."
Sure.
He said, "Do you like to shoot baseball?" Well, I'd never shot baseball in my life, right? So
no fire burnouts in baseball.
No fire bats or anything like that. So, although I did try to convince Richard Maxim one time, he shot for Sports Illustrated. I said, "Well, what you need to do," he was doing an article on Ricky Henderson. I said, "You need to light Ricky's shoes on fire and have him running down the baseline,"
right?
Which he was all for, but Ricky was not really cool about setting his speed on fire. So
you put a little rubber cement down.
Yeah,
that works good. You put. I've done that. How many braking stories have I done where somebody has their shoe? I even did it with my wife. She's got a shoe outside the door, like they're stopping it, and there's a line of
exactly.
Back to the Future thing.
Yeah, I was trying to get Maxim to do that. Like I said, Richard was all for that, but Ricky was like, "Yeah, I don't know about that." But
he was an odd guy anyway. So what the heck? And
Reggie goes over to the PR guy, right? For the Yankees, and he says, "I want this guy." He points to me. He says, "I want him to have a pass to every team in baseball."
How nice was that?
And the guy is like, "Yes, sir, Reggie. Yes, sir."
Wow. Well, Reggie was the guy. I mean, he still has such a legacy with everybody, and we knew him because he was into cars. I mean, he was always around our offices, looking for parts, if I remember correctly. But anyway, like you couldn't pay for him, right? But Reggie was a good guy. He was a good guy to hang with.
Couldn't pay for him. Yeah, we went to an automotive swap meet, right? When I that same weekend when I was at spring training, and we're walking around. He says, "Oh man, I gotta have those Corvette wheels, the Corvette rims, right?"
Yeah.
Okay, well, whatever. He says, "I don't have any money."
Reggie said this?
Yeah, he tells me he didn't have any money. So I said, "Okay, well," so I bought the rims for him. I wrote a check, and the guy that was selling the rims is like, "A check?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Reggie's standing there, and he recognized Reggie, obviously.
Sure.
And Reggie said, "I'll vouch for this guy. He's checks." So, and then to kind of insult to injury, I put him in my van and I transported him to California for him, so he didn't have to pay either. Wow. But
did he pay for him?
He was good for the money. Yeah.
Okay, because I've seen some of these guys getting the money out. It's not exactly a Venmo operation. So
I had to buy him popcorn until one time too in Cleveland because
they don't carry any money.
We got rained out, right? And he didn't have any money. He had left the where they all hang out there, not the dugout, but the clubhouse, right?
Yes, yeah.
He wanted some popcorn, so he's walking around with all the people, right? Because they're waiting. There's a rain delay,
right?
And he wants popcorn, so I bought him popcorn. I didn't make him pay back the popcorn deal though,
but you know what? Those guys, they expect everybody to give them everything for free anyway, and most of the time they do. It's not a situation. It's not something that doesn't happen. They just, they're whatever. So too funny.
We'd like to introduce you to a new sponsor of ours. This is inthegaragemedia.com. Some friends of ours that were in the print magazine business before and now started their own books. We got All Chevy Performance, Classic Truck Performance, and Modern Rotting.
Yeah, these are awesome books. They've got lots of educational and entertainment things in them, and they're even good enough quality to include Steve Strope quality vehicles.
Maybe.
He's
we'll
working
see if
up
I'm
to
allowed in there.
That's right.
I don't know.
So In the Garage Media, inthegaragemedia.com. Check them out.
Check them out.
Get your subscription, sit and read it. And with ARP, it's not just a lot of intake manifolds, studs for heads, but they also have a humongous selection of American and metric that we use all throughout the car, even large bolts that we use on the suspension components, because you want that same strength, that same durability and reliability, plus the beautiful looks.
And stuff outside the catalog.
Right. They have a special order program where if you're a builder and you need some special stuff made, they can do that for you. So it's an amazing, amazing company to work with.
So check them out at arp-bolts.com or check out their catalog. You'll find everything you're looking for.
But something I wanted to get to, because you were there at the onset, was we talked about off camera, but funny cars, because you were there for the whole metamorphosis from altereds to funny cars, correct? I mean, you were there to watch them from the very beginning, which, I mean, they're still such a showstopper these days. So,
well, I at Fremont, when I was a doofus spectator, standing in the corner, so I get the good advantage, in front of the spectators behind me. I'm in the corner by the where the fence is,
right?
To make sure I get I get my 620 Brownie photo. This during the summer of '64, I'm standing there, and all of a sudden there's this rumble, right? Just
right.
And I look up, and it's definitely a nitro motor, but there's no dragsters there. Yeah. So it's like the upper buildup at Fremont, the people just kind of part the ways. Mm-hmm. And here comes this white, look like a comet, right? Comes out, it turns to, it just kind of sitting there, racking the motor a little bit. And it's Jack Chrisman in the Saxon Sons Comet. And it's like, what is this thing? It's not a gas coupe, that's for sure. And it's not a dragster. So it just kind of idles up to the, to the starting line. And I shot one photo of him kind of like, easing up to the starting line. That thing stages. And then, there was a flag starter, of course, there was no Christmas tree. And the flag starter there at Fremont just tells him to go. And the rear tires, just and smoke and noise. And he all the way down the whole quarter mile, the thing is smoking. And I mean, you could have heard, it was just silence, and then just a humongous roar from the crowd. And that was my initial,
that was the first one. That was the first one. That was 64. It didn't have any of the lift off body or any of that kind of stuff.
Oh, no. Right? No, it was basically a stock bodied Comet that was given to Jack Chrisman by a gentleman named Fran Hernandez that worked for Mercury. Okay. They were good friends.
Nice.
Jack had just recovered from, he was injured pretty bad driving the Spaghetti Bender's dragster. The rear end had spun, and he got hurt really bad, and he was just recovering. Right. So Fran gives him this car and says, oh, here, you can be one of you can have a stock, kind of be in the super stock or whatever, and Chrisman says, well, F that. I don't shift, basically. That's what Chrisman told him.
Nice.
So he takes the car to the Saxon Sons in Downey. They put a blown fuel motor in it, tuned by Gene Mooneyham.
Wow. Okay. Wow, there's a name.
And and so, Jack, high gear only, put the big, the heavy duty slicks, the heavy duty rear end, heavy duty, drivetrain, blown motor, put a roll bar in the thing, and IO silver.
Wow. was it altered wheelbase? Was the wheelbase altered?
No, this did not have an altered wheelbase.
Wow. Wow. Because then they went to the AFX stuff that was kind of like the precursor to that deal. But wow, what a legacy. Is he considered the first funny car, the real first funny car to do it?
Well, that's what everybody, historians or whatever, they will say, okay, that Chrisman had the first actual funny car. Then you'll have your purists say, oh no, the first actual funny car was 1963, and that was Gene Mooneyham, the Mooneyham and Sharp 554 coupe, which was the Ford bodied coupe with a blown Chrysler on it that did the same thing that the Chrisman's car, the smoked the entire quarter mile, high gear only. Larry Faust drove the car. Well, there was two drivers. I can't remember the first guy. But Larry Faust drove the thing. He ran in like 170 miles an hour in 1963 with the thing.
Wow.
So that had to have been a heck of a ride. But a lot of people will argue, well, that's the first funny car. Well, the first modern body, new age, however you want to word it, would have been Jack Chrisman. Yeah. And now they say that car debuted at Indy.
Really? Huh.
it
It was, oh, you're here to prove it different. Yeah. Okay.
debuted at Fremont, but they didn't want to run it in Southern California because if it was a flop,
Yeah.
better have.
Is that where that came from? Is that where that came from? Flopper?
Yeah. Yeah, right. But if it people hated it, then okay, the people at Fremont hated it. So it was like an off-Broadway show, right? You take your show you're going to put on Broadway and you run it off Broadway. If it sucks, then
makes sense.
But
that makes perfect sense. That's great. But then the the fiberglass altered vehicles that didn't show up till like 67 or 8, did it not?
66.
66. And who was that? Who were the guys? Who?
Don Nicholson.
Don Nicholson. Wow.
Nicholson.
Another legacy name. Yeah.
Nicholson had the first. There was I believe four factory Mercury body. The whole flip top, whatever. With the Logie chassis. The Logie brothers built the chassis, and that was another Fran Hernandez thing. That was that the Chrisman's vehicle came from.
Wow.
I believe there was Nicholson, Eddie Sharpman, Kenson Leslie out of Colorado, and I think there was one other. There was like four cars that were spread out over the United States, and the first one to win a major event was Eddie Sharpman. I think Sharpman won the World Finals that year with that flip body, whatever configuration, tube chassis.
What class were they running? Yeah, what class were they running in, out of curiosity?
They ran I think they called it, well, if they had a supercharger on it, it was SX/S, which was a supercharged experimental stock.
Got it.
And they switched it around to XS and XSX, and nobody could decide on what to do.
Letters. Yeah.
And the NHRA national events, they ran the funny cars in super eliminator.
Wow.
They had to run against dragsters. What happened was they put the funny cars, they had to run like a class runoff, like a super stock or whatever. And that winner came back and had to run in super comp or super eliminator is what they called it back then. So in 68, Ray Alley ran up against the Galley brothers, a fuel dragster for the money, and the Galley brothers won. And then the following year, funny cars had their own eliminator, which is an NHRA. They had their own
class. Yeah. Okay.
And Claire Sanders won with Jungle Jim's Nova.
Right. Wow. Well, what amazes me is, we're not young anymore, but your clarity on these names far exceeds my remembrance of anything I ever did previous to this. I got to tell you, I'm totally impressed with the fact that you can remember the chassis builder, the guy who drove it, the owner. That's awesome. That is awesome.
I've done these crazy books that it's kind of like burns into your mind after a while. I mean,
well, you've done a good job. It's crazy.
Well, I can go through. My next pitch to Arcadia is I want to do a Southern California funny car book. All the cars that came out of Southern California, being the first car came out of there. Okay, and the winningest driver has come out of there, John Force.
John Force, yeah, absolutely. So
I thought it'd be a good,
absolutely.
Chrisman here, Force there, and all the guys kind of in between, all the wacky, from lone fuel Volkswagens and all this other happy stuff that they ran in Los Angeles and also through Southern California.
But you were especially the 60s and 70s was the heyday for these cars, the Jungle Jim Liebermans, the Rain for Rent cars, all those cars that were so crowd pleasing or dominant. I remember watching Rain for Rent at the end of the 70s, and nobody was running. They were running fives, and nobody was even close. I mean, they just showed up.
Coburn and Miller. And I used to run into Marvin Miller all the time. He was a big Kings hockey fan.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I'd see him at the hockey games when I was photographing hockey there for a while. And
Why not? Why not do hockey? You do everything else.
well, you're the one that got me started in the hockey when you were in sport.
Yeah, I loved hockey. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. I ran Sport Magazine. I forget. I did that 6 years, something like another part of my life. But yes.
Well, your photographer you had at Sport, he was doing photos for Bruce, the guy out of New
Bruce
York.
McDowell. Bruce McDowell?
No, Bruce McDowell, he's in prison.
Yes, he is. I think he's out now.
Okay. Bruce Bennett Studios out of New York.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's who your photographer
That was the contact, huh?
was shooting for. Well, basically, I think somebody in the upper echelon of Peterson told your photographer, pick one, either Sport Magazine or NHL hockey. So he hooked me up with
NHL. Yeah.
the NHL, with Bruce, and
Right.
I became one of his stringers, and mainly the Kings, and I shot the
isn't-
King and the Sharks and the Ducks.
Yeah. Isn't hockey like miserably hard to shoot?
Oh, it is. I'll tell you what, it keeps you sharp as far
I
as
bet.
your toes and fast moving. Now, drag racing, I had to worry about blowers flying off and all this other stuff, right? You gotta understand, drag racing, the cars don't get you.
Yeah.
It's the parts that get you.
Correct. Yes.
So that's the one thing I worried about. Now, hockey, you have this little hard rubber thing. It's called
Yeah.
and you best know where that puck is at all the time, because they hurt. I got hit twice. The puck coming over the glass.
Yeah.
They hurt.
I don't doubt it. But you had to shoot through the glass in a fluorescent or whatever lighting scenario that is hanging there. That had to be miserable. Did they have strobes in the? Sorry, we're breaking down into other stuff, because I know the basketball stuff there were a set of strobes up in the top.
I was using those basketball strobes.
Oh, you were? There you go.
Yeah, Bennett Studios would rent the strobes from the Forum, or from the LA Times, actually.
Right.
The LA Times guy would come out, set them up for me, make sure everything's cool. And then they'd drop a line, a hard wire, and the hard wire would be taped into position where you're going to shoot, and holes cut in the ice, or in the ice, in the
glass. Yeah. Okay.
That was your position. That's where you shot. And
wow.
What was amusing was the guys would come out for skate around, the players, right? And they would try to put a puck into the
hole
just for fun. Which
you thought fire burnouts were nasty. Oh my gosh.
The pucks would hurt.
Well, it hits the end of your lens, goes right to your eye. Yeah, that's probably not
that happened with a Sports Illustrated guy at I was shooting in Tampa, doing the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Blackhawks, and a puck did come through the hole.
Yeah.
Took out his like $1 zillion experimental Nikon lens that he had borrowed from Nikon, destroyed the lens and knocked him back on the concrete floor.
I bet.
The same night, the Tampa Bay photographer, same thing happened to him. He went back. They had to cart him to the hospital because he split his head open on the concrete on the floor. So they needed hazardous pain that evening.
Wow, how crazy is that?
I escaped.
Something that, and that's awesome, because I forgot about all that, but you're welcome.
Part of the deal, right?
Exactly. We pass it around. So in terms of highlight photos from your archive, I mean, obviously there's so many, and you sent me a bunch. There's a lot of stuff that is just amazing, and we'll run some of that here, obviously interlaced with this conversation. But are there photos, say, top 5, or anything that stands out in your mind of a photo that you still look at today and you go, God, that was a good photo?
Well, there's a few.
There's more than a few, I'm sure.
Well, the ones I really enjoy looking at, like, how did I ever get that photo? But I was very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. And And actually, a couple of those I was very fortunate to walk away without any holes in me.
Right.
Flying apart. So, Larry Bowers with his clutch coming out at Orange County.
That's a crazy one where they're all like splayed up above him and you can see all the pieces came out. Wow.
And if you look close, there's a rod coming out the motor too at the bottom. So
I'll look again.
it was like a mass destruction deal.
Wow. Wow.
That was one shot. That was just one shot. And I was on the wrong side of the track. Every story or every photo has a story connected to it, how I got it. And it was one of those deals where I got called across the track and somebody wanted to say something nonsensical to me, like, hey, you want a soda or something, something like that. And I got trapped. I couldn't go back. I couldn't cross the track. So, okay, Bowers is coming down and this other guy, okay, I'll stay there and shoot.
Right.
I never saw the clutch come out. All I saw was the clutch dust. And then, all heck breaks loose. There's pieces and there's, crap flying everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. I didn't get hit, but a gentleman in the pits is walking through the pits, minding his own business. One of the discs hit in front of him and made like an inch indentation in the asphalt, and it came up and it took his kneecap off.
Oh, no.
So I was very, very fortunate. I was closer, than most people would want to be, but it's one of those things where you stand there and you go, well, are there any holes in me right now? I mean, I experienced that with Les Lovett and a couple other people. It's like Lovett got hit in Indy one year, him and I standing side by side, and Doc Holliday comes through and blows the engine up in his top fuel dragster, and Lovett got hit with a part of the block. And I'm just standing there, and Lovett is like screaming at me, you're bigger than me. How come you didn't get hit? Well, I don't know.
Right. Well, speaking of that, that's a good transition here, because we talked about, your early days and touring with these guys and doing different things. Guys like Leslie Lovett, who I knew, I worked at National Dragster 78, 79 before going to Hot Rod. And Leslie was the photographer for years. And then his wife, he had an unfortunate deal where he passed. And his wife, Teresa, then took it from there. And you mentioned to me that she just left. But you met Leslie because he was running a magazine, correct?
Right. He was the photo director at Superstock magazine.
Oh, okay.
This was 1966.
Right.
November of 1966, I get this phone call out of the blue. One of those, hi, I'm Leslie Lovett, and I hear you know how to shoot photos. That's basically, what he says to me.
Good.
And
Good. Yeah, I'd say that fits. Yeah, there you go.
Like, and because I knew who he was. I mean,
well, sure. Yeah.
I thumbed through Superstock and I'd heard his name before, but I'd never met him.
Right.
Just out of the blue, I don't even know how he got my phone number, but he called and he said, well, you have a match race in 2 weeks at Fremont, and we want to do it for Match Race Madness for Superstock.
Nice.
And it's like, okay. He says, can you, this is what I need. It's Jungle Jim in his brand new blown Nova is going to race Gas Ronda in his long-nosed injected nitro burning, Mustang. Can you get this, that, whatever? We need race shots and we need maybe a couple people photos. And I said, yeah, I think I can, I can handle that. And I don't think I slept for a week waiting for
the race. Huh?
Yeah. And sure enough, I got out there and clicked my little brains out, and and I sent him some photos, and he was elated. They ran a nice full page thing on it, and
nice.
And
it was your first taste. Was that your first magazine assignment?
Sorry?
Was that your first magazine assignment?
Yeah, that was my first official.
Nice.
I had done some stuff for like John Asher at All American Drags, but that was all spec. And John, he took care of my local guys if I needed like a couple page feature or whatever. Right. And like I was telling you about, Goodnight Keith and Williamson, the top gas guys, I got them in All American Drags, but deservedly so. A lot of people don't realize Bob Keith, they were on the first American drag racing team tour to Europe. They were
Wow.
member that whole team, which was
Right.
Carlos, Ivo, etc. You know, the whole deal.
Sure.
And Bob Keith was the first American drag racer to ever make a run on English soil.
Really?
That's
Wow.
one of the little
There's
trivia
a
things.
legacy.
Yeah, he was the first guy to ever make a pass, American.
Was there a track?
Kinda.
What
They
was the
used- I
track?
think they used the Air Force Base somewhere
Sure.
in England, but because I don't believe Sanopod was functioning at that
Probably
time.
not. Probably not at that point. You mentioned John Asher. John Asher went on to have an amazing career too. I mean, he moved around. He went from All American Drags. He was in Chicago. Is that correct? Okay, so I got that right.
Yeah.
And then he ended up becoming a photographer and writer for Carcraft, and then editor for a number of years. And but he loved shooting drag races. There's no
Well, he
question.
did, he did the AHRA circuit with Jim Kelly. They were the
There you
they were
go.
the guys that kept AHRA in the
Keep
in
them
the
rolling, huh?
spotlight, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you sent me a nice photo of that, so we'll pop that up here too. But John lives in New Mexico, and I don't think he lives. I don't think he goes away from his home there. He's next to the property where the Dalton gang live. So
Yeah, he doesn't. He basically he hung it up about a year or two ago. He got burned out, and financially he felt that it wasn't lucrative enough anymore. And
Right.
and John is he's enjoying life right now with Carol and
Yep.
just
he's retired long time. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, he's quite the legacy. He was always the wild man. If you get John's attention, he'd get in your face and he'd be talking to you. But
there wasn't a topic that John wouldn't discuss with you. Put it that way.
pretty much covered the world. So that was
or
pretty
Tom,
fun.
he would go into it. But we had a few adventures together. Me and John. I flew into Chicago one time and stayed with him and at the time his wife Stephanie, and she was afraid of me. I mean, I showed up, and like you said, I'm not exactly a small person.
How tall are you? 6'5"?
6'5".
Yeah.
And at the time I was like a couple of biscuits over about 280 or something like that, and I show up at their place, and I got the long shoulder length hair and the whole deal, and I look kind of like a part of the Manson family, right? I mean, I'm ready to.
I think when I think of Steve Reyes, hopefully this isn't an uncomfortable deal, but did you ever see the movie Raising Arizona
Oh yeah,
with Randall Tex Cobb?
yeah, oh yeah.
And I see that guy and I go, Reyes is bigger than him.
Well, what did Bill Lloyd used to call me, Chewy?
Yes, exactly. And you had your dog with you. And then you had your dog with you, Oliver. Oliver was my favorite. Oliver, he'd join you for a meal most of the time, would he not? He'd eat off the same plate, whatever. Yeah, it's quite.
Yeah, he'd kill you for a glazed donut. I mean,
right.
he'd go for the throat.
Your hand weighed more than Oliver. So yeah,
he's pretty
he's
psycho.
an awesome dog. But you mentioned Asher and Chicago and such. And I think we're going to have have part 2 here in a little bit. But you mentioned Chicago and the Chicago style drag races, and that was the format was basically that everybody would run, and then top 2 ETs ran against each other for the money.
Yeah, those Gary US 30, and it was animalistic. I'll tell you that.
Right.
No guard.
Gary, Indiana, outside Chicago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, these guys would be on tour. It's obviously during the summer, and these guys would be on tour. It's a Wednesday night deal.
Right.
Everybody that came ran.
Yeah.
2 OETs, like you said, would run for the money.
Right.
And there was a few guys like Bobby Wood and the LA Hooker guys. They made a career out of that deal. They knew that track like the back of their hand, and all these guys would be touring, coming through, and to be honest, most of them didn't know how to set up a car on that particular track because they'd never run there before, or they'd only run once or twice, whatever. But these guys would run like every Wednesday. You could find Bobby Wood or the LA Hooker guys would be there, and you'd run each other for the money or whatever, because they would be the guys. and
Right.
you'd have cars, running off the track, and these guys wouldn't lift because
Right.
the two low ETs would come back and run, and it was crazy. And then they'd stop the race because they'd have a murder or something in the grandstands, and
It was that era, wasn't it? It was
yeah,
crazy.
they had knifings and shooting because they do a lot of gambling. They'd have all
Yes.
these guys gambling in the grandstands, and they'd kind of be like sore losers, or they'd argue on who really got to the finish line first, and then they'd pull out guns and knives and go at it, and they'd cart the bodies away, and then they keep running the funny cars.
Wow.
And it was interesting.
That's
to go
crazy.
with.
But
Very
the-
interesting.
But the LA Hooker guys, basically, despite the fact saying LA Hooker, they were the home field advantage guys because they had knowledge of the track and the surface and how it ran and the whole bit.
Yeah,
So you were saying they were consistently in the money.
yeah, oh yeah, and
Awesome.
a lot of other things too, but mainly money.
Wow.
Wow. With the hooker guys was sex, alcohol, and rock and roll, so to speak.
Well, on that note, I'm going to have to wrap this one up because we're right at about an hour, but I got to tell you, we're going to come back and do some more of this stuff. But
Whatever. I got monster truck stories. I got all this stuff.
I want it all. I want it all. We got to
Touring
do it all.
Japan with big
Especially because you illustrated it. That friend of mine that I mentioned, Bill Tower down in Florida, that I'm trying to find this stuff for him. He was saying that the situation was that he never had a camera, so he has no photos of his car, and that was the case. That's why guys like you documenting stuff like this was such an important factor of what goes on.
I couldn't drag race because I couldn't fit in the car, but hey, might as well keep photos of them.
Perfect.
I did send you a photo of me cackling John Ewald's master car. I cackled that car. They stuffed the car, and I got the cackle.
That had to be elbows into the edge.
I
But
cackled
that's
Ewald's
awesome.
car, and I cackled Wayne King's car. So
Wow. Well, that's cool. How fun is that? That's awesome.
it was like I don't see how these guys did it. No, I don't want to do this. No, I'd rather
Oh, too
shoot
tight.
photos.
Too tight. If that bar gets bent in here, that's going to be really, really snug in here. But I want to mention your books again. They're Arcadia Press, and you can get them through Barnes and Noble. Is that the best way, or is there a
Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or directly from Arcadia? But
right?
it's not a huge book, but it's not. It's 220 photos,
That's
all
a good-
captioned, and
Yeah.
intros to each 4 chapters, and it's sepia toned. It's a nice package. I think if you like drag racing, front engine dragsters, and fuel Alders and stuff like that, I mean, it'd be a nice collector's piece for you. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. But you have 9 books. Are they all available on Amazon?
No, they're all. I think the only one I think is still available would be the Top Fuel book I did for Car Tech. Most of them have already, run their run the
So
gamut.
eBay. So
Yeah.
eBay is the way, huh?
Yeah, well, there's they reprinted my drag racing. What is it? Chaos. All the crash and burn and
Wow.
wacky stuff. That's been reprinted, so that one's available also. The
Okay.
2 would be the drag racing Chaos, and then the Top Fuel book, and now the new one, the Arcadia book. And
Right. In Northern California, right?
and then of course, like I said, Lou Hart's funny car book, I do have quite a bit in
there
that
too.
in that book, and that's coming out also. That's a Car Tech book, and that would that'd be an Amazon thing.
Excellent. Well, we'll come back and do some more fun stuff here.
Anytime.
Absolutely. There's too much good stuff.
Colleague, I mean, we hung out in Chicago together. We drove around in a Mercedes together.
Yes, we did. That was Gary Dyer's Mercedes.
Gary
So we got
Dyer.
all kinds of stuff to talk about. All kinds of stuff to talk about. But I want to thank you, Steve, for taking the time to be on the show here. This is Car Guy Confessions without Jeff Smith, but he'll be back soon. No problem there. And again, a call out to ARP Bolts, arp-bolts.com. And thank you for all your help there. Till next time, Steve. We'll get you.
You have a good one. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.